Most people think Sun Tzu was a master of war. His name gets tossed around in business meetings and strategy seminars like he was some philosopher of pure domination. But that version of Sun Tzu completely misses the point. Because when you actually read what he wrote, you realize something uncomfortable. Sun Tzu wasn't obsessed with winning battles. He was obsessed with avoiding them. And not for moral reasons, but for financial ones. In Sun Tzu's world, war was a cancer, destroying states from the inside out. He lived during a time of constant conflict in ancient China, when kingdoms fought endlessly to expand their territory and prestige. And in the process, they drained their treasuries dry. Armies were getting bigger every decade. Warfare was no longer a symbolic clash between nobles. It was a massive mobilization of people and resources. It required food, weapons, supply lines, heavy taxation, and a huge bureaucracy. Every single military campaign was a massive financial gamble. Sending an army into the field wasn't just a military decision. It was like taking out a huge loan against your country's future. And many rulers never paid that loan back. This is the reality Sun Tzu was facing. He wasn't a poet or a mystic. He was a hard-nosed strategist looking at an economic crisis disguised as a military one. While everyone else was talking about bravery and honor, Sun Tzu was looking at cost, time, and sustainability. He understood that a battlefield victory means absolutely nothing if your economy collapses right after. That's why The Art of War opens with a warning, not a celebration. Sun Tzu calls war a matter of vital importance to the state, not glorious, not noble, but vital. Vital because if you mismanage it, it will destroy everything you have. From that first page, all his ideas revolve around one core obsession: minimizing damage, especially financial damage. Even his most famous lines are actually economic principles in disguise. When he says the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, he's not being philosophical. He's talking about cost avoidance. It's about achieving your goals without burning through all your resources. When he warns that no nation has ever benefited from a prolonged war, he's stating a basic financial truth. Time multiplies cost. Every extra day on campaign drains labor, food, and money that you will never get back. Speed, intelligence, deception, and psychological pressure mattered so much to Sun Tzu because they were cheaper than armies. Direct, head-on conflict was brutally expensive. Delay was ruinous. Efficiency preserved the state. Waste destroyed it. This way of thinking was revolutionary. Before Sun Tzu, war was often treated like a ritual, a matter of honor where cost barely factored in. But as populations grew and war scaled up, that mindset became fatal. States were forced to reform their tax systems, standardize their currency, and expand their governments just to keep fighting. War had become the single biggest threat to the national budget. Sun Tzu understood that treating war emotionally, instead of analytically, was a direct path to collapse. So he treated conflict like a balance sheet. He evaluated supply chains, resource depletion, and opportunity cost centuries before those terms even existed. To him, every single decision on the battlefield was ultimately a financial one. Read The Art of War through this lens and it stops sounding like poetry and starts sounding incredibly practical. Sun Tzu lists the fundamental factors that determine success, but beneath the philosophy, it's all risk assessment. How stable is the government? How resilient are the people? How costly is it to move your army? How disciplined is your administration? He implies that leaders who can't calculate cost have no business calculating strategy. Logistics dominate the book for a reason. Sun Tzu explains that distance dramatically increases cost. Transporting supplies drains wealth faster than paying the soldiers themselves. And prolonged campaigns devastate agriculture and productivity back home. He urges commanders to use the enemy's resources whenever possible, not as a clever tactic, but as a financial necessity. A wasteful general doesn't just lose a war. They bankrupt a nation. Even his ideas on intelligence follow this logic. A single, well-placed source of information can prevent entire armies from marching in the wrong direction, saving a fortune. What Sun Tzu called foreknowledge, we now call data. Information was the cheapest and most effective weapon available. Misusing it wasn't just dangerous. It was financially reckless. Speed, too, was all about economics. Moving quickly reduced your army's exposure and supply needs. Waiting around just increased your costs. Winning through clever maneuvering preserved your resources. Winning through a slow, grinding war of attrition destroyed them. Flexibility wasn't some philosophical flair. It was fiscal discipline. At the very core of Sun Tzu's thinking is opportunity cost. Every decision you make closes off other, potentially cheaper, alternatives. The ultimate waste, in his view, is fighting a battle you didn't have to fight in the first place. That's why he valued diplomacy, intimidation, alliances, and psychological pressure so highly. These weren't secondary tools. They were primary because they conserved capital. And history proved him right. The states that ignored the cost of war collapsed under the weight of their own drawn-out conflicts. Those that treated war as a limited financial instrument survived and even thrived. This pattern repeats across centuries. Empires don't fall because their soldiers lack courage. They fall because their economic model breaks. Sun Tzu wasn't teaching rulers how to dominate. He was teaching them how to endure. He wasn't telling them how to strike harder, but how to last longer. His philosophy isn't the mindset of a warrior. It's the mindset of a steward, someone responsible for the long-term stability and health of the state. In the end, Sun Tzu's financial genius boils down to one powerful insight: power and economics can never be separated. War is the most expensive policy decision a state can ever make. And the leader who fails to calculate its true cost is already defeated, long before the first arrow is fired. Strength isn't measured by how hard you can strike. It's measured by how long you can afford to. This is Legacy of Money. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories on the hidden economics of history.